Right now, Anthony Weiner's campaign moving full speed ahead, but doesn't have a whole lot of high-profile love right now in New York political circles. Could you see Anthony Weiner, though, in City Hall nonetheless? And next, get ready for the next big fight here, immigration reform. We're going to hear from the RNC's top spin doctor explaining how the Republican Party is navigating a very tricky issue for him. And later, the state of the shore. We will take you down the shore from an update on how Jersey's beloved beaches are shaping up for what will be a very important summer season. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I am Richard Trench, and thank you so much for joining us this Friday evening, May 24th. We're going to have all that for you, plus a couple interesting conversations. For those of you who focused or saw what happened with J.P. Morgan Chase, there was a fight over what would happen with Jamie Dimon. Would he still wear two hats? At the end of the day, he will. But there was also some troubling news that you might have even seen on the cover of the Times today about who is actually writing when it comes to the major chiefs on Wall Street, who is writing financial policy. We're going to get into all that with a guest. And also, a very moving segment. We all know what Monday is. It's Memorial Day weekend. I'm sure for many of you, you have loved ones either in the military or that were in the military. But for those who need any remembrance as to why we celebrate Monday as a national holiday, we have a segment where we went down to Dover in Delaware. And Dover, as many may know, is where the remains of servicemen and women who are lost in the front lines come back before they are finally buried. And we show you just the unbelievable care those people show our nation's heroes and the bravest that come in. So we're going to have that in as well. Again, that'll be coming up a little bit later in the program. So we're going to have those conversations. We're going to talk New York politics as well. We're going to bring in Richard Brodsky and Mr. Cahill, and they'll give you the right and left sides of major New York political issues. And as I said, Andrew's also going to be talking to the RNC press sec, who's going to tell you how that party is dealing with the two issues as it relates to immigration, where some are for it. They see it as a major political boon, huge part of the electorate. And then on the flip side, they're dealing with the other issue of some people are saying, time out here, this is glorified amnesty. All right, so we'll get into all that stuff. But let me bring in our panel first on this. Bill O'Reilly, Republican consultant, columnist in Newsday, and good friend to the show. Dominic Carter, of course, political journalist and author, and our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman. And Andrew, why don't we get started with immigration, because earlier today you spoke to the RNC chief, and for those who haven't been following, because there's been a lot of other news and scandals that have been dominating Washington lately, one of the big questions has been how will Republicans deal with this, especially considering right after the election they acknowledged that the Latino vote was one of the major reasons they don't have one of their own in the White House.
We've got that going on, Rich. The Senate Judiciary Committee just passed their marked up bill out of committee. It's going to go to the full Senate probably in a couple of weeks and will likely take about 6 weeks to get through the entire Senate. But at the heart of the issue is whether you're going to extend citizenship to those who are in the country illegally at this point, or whether that's considered amnesty. And that was really the focus of my conversation with Sean Spicer. He, of course, the head of communications for the RNC. Take a look at our interview. In the post-mortem to the 2012 election, your party wrote that immigration reform needs to be championed and embraced by the GOP. You've also got Marco Rubio saying now is the time to get involved and do this. But then at the same time, you get Steve King out of Iowa saying it's basically redefining the word amnesty and calling it immigration reform, or Jim Sensenbrenner saying vast majority of Republican caucus will be against amnesty no matter what it's called. Can the RNC, the national party, get behind any immigration deal that involves a path to citizenship?
Well, I think what you've taken one statement and applied it to a completely set of different circumstances. The report that you're referring to said that in order to further reach Hispanic voters and broaden our appeal, we need to get past the issue of immigration reform. It didn't say what that immigration reform needed to look like. The RNC is a political party. We don't do policy. And so that's then left up to the lawmakers to do that. There is several different versions of that flowing through the House, and now, as you mentioned, the Senate's kind of coming to agreement on that. We don't take a position saying this is the right way to go. We're making a political point which says in order to expand the base in the Hispanic community, we need to get past this hurdle. How we get past that hurdle is then left to the lawmakers to decide that.
Fair enough, Sean, but just indulge me if you will, what is immigration reform if it doesn't change the status quo for undocumented immigrants in the United States right now? I mean, the way it is right now, they're either going to get sent home or they're going to live in the shadows. If there's no path to citizenship, aren't those still the only options for undocumented immigrants?
No, because you're looking specifically at the legislation on the table. What immigration reform can mean is, hey, we secure the border first, then we address how we're going to deal with temporary workers, then we're going to deal with this. That's comprehensive immigration reform. Just because you deal with one specific aspect of it doesn't necessarily mean that is you can then turn around and call it comprehensive immigration reform. How it's dealt with, the specifics of it, is again left up to the House and Senate. The point that we are trying to make is that the issue has been batted around. Frankly, everybody agrees that the immigration system is broken. Our only point is that there has to be some way of everyone coming together, figuring out how to get past it in order to achieve further political means.
Again, your point is well taken, but you've got 13 million undocumented immigrants in the country right now. If you do anything that's called immigration reform that doesn't lead to a path to citizenship or kick everybody out of the country, you're going to have 13 million undocumented immigrants still in the country after reform is passed. How is reform without a path to citizenship reform, really? It's border control and it's other things, but it doesn't solve the problem, does it?
Well, again, you're confusing two things. We are a political committee. We were looking at a political analysis. That's what that report was. And you're asking me to comment on legislation, which is not our job. So I would say that there are several components that go into this in terms of, yes, border security it has to be first and foremost, and then how it's dealt with, whether it's through the E-Verify system and when that gets phased in, or how you deal with certain folks, how long they've been in the country or not in the country, and then their children. Again, is all a question that's left up to the lawmakers to decide how that is all addressed.
But, okay, all right, we'll leave it there. Sean Spicer, RNC Communications Director, appreciate a few minutes of your time. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Andrew. Have a great weekend.
And Rich, one additional note, late word from Robert Menendez, Senator from New Jersey, who was on the Gang of Eight that wrote that bill in the Judiciary Committee in the Senate. He doesn't think the bill as it stands right now can get to 60 votes and get past the Senate, much less get past the House. So a lot of work still to be done. This thing probably won't get out of the Senate until the 4th of July.
And trying to run through the gauntlet of the House can be tough. Now, Bill, I remember right after the election, the RNC chair, Sean's boss over there, they did the postmortem. And they said, among other things, we can't win just being the old white guy party. It's not going to work. The math doesn't add up. He specifically addressed the Latino vote broke, what was it, 70-30, Andrew, something close to that, for Obama over Romney. And he didn't just think it was because of the candidate. My question is, can the Republicans really do some dance and at the end of the day come out with, I think Republicans need this even more than Democrats do, don't they, to have real immigration reform?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Sean that politically we need to get over this hurdle, but I don't think you can rush and do a bad job at it, which I think happened in 1986 with Ronald Reagan when he did deliver what was then called an amnesty, which was an amnesty. And without the borders being shut, which I frankly think would be very difficult to do anyway, without that, you just you're hanging out a carrot in the country for others to come in there, to go through. At the same extent, if you don't go for full citizenship, I think that's a really dangerous. I think it's a really dangerous thing because you see, one thing that doesn't help this argument is what's going on in the New York City Council right now, where they're about to pass a bill. They have a veto-proof number of votes, if you listen to the people behind the bill, that will extend voting rights to legal non-citizens. Now that's where you end up with two different countries. You have citizens, and then you have legal non-citizens. We've never lived like that before.
And we've had these issues with driver's licenses in different states.
Exactly.
Dominic, it's funny, if they put a bubble around Washington, whatever they decide, I think they still miss the point, which is the public has to consume whatever they do and figure out who helped me or who hurt me. If this is muddled and nothing gets done, I don't see how Republicans win out of this. I remember George W. Bush, what basically the president and they're trying to do in the Senate is exactly what George Bush tried to pass here, and he couldn't get enough support from his own party. They need a clear thing where they get to say, I did that too. Otherwise, if it gets watered down, the president, and then the president's going to get credit for it. Republicans aren't any closer to it. They've just ticked off some of their base. they're not asking me for advice, they're asking Bill, but if they were asking me, I'd say make it clean, swallow hard, hold your nose, but get the thing done and get it done so you guys can take some credit for it. I mean, that's why they're doing this, isn't it? To try and get more votes next election.
Well, they're surely not asking me for advice. So I joined the club. I joined the club with you guys. They're doing this to expand the base. You know, they had their rear ends handed to them a few times. They're trying to turn it around. But the problem, Richard, is that you're coming at this from a common sense approach that makes a lot of sense. But a lot of these Tea Party folks, they just don't care. They're flamethrowers, they don't care, and the mainstream party, Republican Party, is being pulled down with these guys.
But they have a point, and I'm okay with an immigration bill. I don't care if you call it amnesty personally, but when you have someone say just something simple like, "What about illegal don't you understand?" There is a point there. This is a nation of laws.
There is, but here's what I saw. I saw what Rubio said, which he said, okay, wait, you got to have a job. You got to keep your nose clean. You got to learn the language. You got to pay back taxes. This wasn't like, hey, just show up at the office. You'll get your Social Security number. You'll be a citizen here, and you get a slap on the back, and you'll get to, say the oath tomorrow.
No, that's right.
There was a whole thing, and there was a wait. And he was pillared in certain, I mean, he's as conservative as they come. Right. And Marco Rubio was pillared here as saying you're a sellout, you're doing amnesty. If that's happening, I still don't understand, and call me a cynic, but this was politically motivated to broaden the base, like Dom said. If they can't even get past that hurdle, I don't see how they help their prospects to have a broader base.
I think eventually they do get through. I think there will be a bill at some point. I don't know whether it happens this year or not, but some are trying to work towards it. But I think the point that Republicans have is that there's so many things in the Latino community where there's agreement, and the Republican Party and the Conservative Party.
This is the only thing holding away.
This is the obstacle, absolutely, which Sean from the RNC said very well.
Especially on a lot of social issues. Right. This is overwhelmingly Catholic population, and they believe in a lot of the social platforms
Family
the GOP
values,
says.
Exactly.
So, if anything, they're shooting themselves in the foot.
But how do you do this without creating a massive incentive for millions of others to come across the border?
I don't think the legislation does that. I think it basically qualifies. You have to self-qualify how long you've been here for. You have to qualify how long you've held employment for. You have to then qualify that you have no criminal record. You have to show residency requirements, and you have to pay back taxes and learn. I mean,
and you got to wait about 13 years.
And then you got to wait a whole long time. So I don't think it's, as much as some love to say that it's a glorified amnesty, I think it's tougher than even a lot of people thought it would have been.
I just don't think a path to citizenship can get passed right now, and I'm not sure if a bill gets through without a path to citizenship or without resolution of that issue.
That's right.
I think they're going to try to call it immigration reform. I just don't know if it is or if voters will take it.
But I'm not sure if anything but citizenship is enough. I think if you're going to do it, you have to go for citizenship.
I'm with you. It's got to be the full Monty.
Yeah, you can't have two countries going on.
Guys, I'm going to bring you guys back in a few minutes here. When we come back, we're going to bring in a couple of our friends here to talk about New York politics. We're going to bring in Mr. Rich Brodsky and John Cahill, two guys who know Albany real well here, one on the left and one on the right, and trust me, they agree on just about nothing here. They'll talk about some of the trouble that is Albany here. They'll talk about Anthony Weiner and a few other things as well. Stick around, everybody. We'll be right back.